Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Imperfect Podcast. I'm here today at Mastermind Studios, and I'm so excited because today I'm joined by the amazing Hope Moquin. She is a speaker, a life coach. She's the author of The Second Table and founder of Becoming Better. She has such an incredible story, and her mission is really to help others use what they've experienced for good and really commit to becoming better in every area of their lives, which is so amazing, and I'm so excited to pick her brain. So welcome, Hope.
Oh my goodness, I'm so excited to be here, and so thank you for having me.
So just getting started, do you want to start out by telling everyone a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, I feel like that's such a loaded question.
It really
but
is. You can start small, just like the brief overview.
Yeah, gosh, I have such a long story. So brief overview, a little bit about me. I work for Free Chapel College, so I'm the associate director there, and then do life coaching and becoming better, like you said. I love that. And so fun fact, I work at the same church that I got kicked out of when I was 15. And so it's like a full circle story. And so I get to tell all of our students and everything, like, it really doesn't matter, like, where you go. Like, it's not how you start, but it's how you finish that matters. And so that has been like a really cool thing. But honestly, just like starting small. I know that sounds like really cliche, but people like have these big dreams of like where they want to go, and they just don't take the first step because it doesn't seem big enough or doesn't seem significant enough. But honestly, like, I just started with a crappy website when I was like 16. I look back at it now because I remember it, and I was like, oh my gosh, like, no one told me, but it was rough. But I just started, and so I just started with writing, started with reaching out to people, just started celebrating people where I was at and where they were at, and like gradually it has grown into what it is now. But I started super small, and I think that's something that people don't ever talk about or they overlook, but it's the small steps that will lead up to the big dreams that you have.
Yeah. I love that, because I do think it's like the people that generally have a platform and that are like celebrated and empowering people are the people that are like at the top or like have had success. And so I feel like I agree. It's hard when you're in that in between where you have like a vision and you're working towards something and you're not seeing the fruit of it yet. And it's hard to like bridge the gap of like where you are and where you know you want to be. And so like you said, it can be overwhelming to even take the first step. And I know for me, I'm like such a perfectionist. So I'm like, if I feel like I don't have all the pieces in place, I don't have the perfect website, I don't have this, it paralyzes me sometimes. So I love that. I think it's such an important reminder just to start small with what you have and make it good. Start good, then make it better, then make it better. You know, I feel like that's part of the journey, is just like going with what you have. And I know that you talk a lot about using the pain that you experience for good. And even like you were saying, like you got kicked out of a church and now you're working there, which I would love to hear more about that. That's amazing. But like, did you always have that mindset of committing to what you've experienced for good, and kind of how did you get to that point?
Yeah, no, I did not always have that mindset. And so that's why like it's so, it's like really sweet for me to remember where I used to be to where I am now, because 10 years ago when I was, how old am I? I'm about to be 24. 10 years ago when I was like 14, 15, 16, I was like the meanest person in the world. And like no one really believes me, but like I'm like, I don't
believe that.
I know, like, but that just goes to show like the difference that like you can have like over time. But I was the meanest person in the world. Like, I'd cuss anyone out, I'd get in any kind of fight, I was addicted to drugs, like all kinds of stuff. And I was like, I just played victim to my own circumstances. I was like, well, my mom wasn't in my life, so like I'm going to be a brat to these kind of people, or I got heartbroken, so I'm going to be this kind of way. And I just played a victim for so long. And then I'm really big on my faith personally, and so I came to know the Lord when I was 16, and it was the only thing that ever worked for me, and because I tried everything else. And so like in that process from 16 to now, I don't know where there was like this aha moment, but I think just over time, the more that I talked to people, the more that I heard people's stories, the really, really dark parts of my life and the really hard parts of my life was the only thing that seemed to correlate with people, and was the only things that actually seemed to resonate with people. And so then I started to think, and I was like, honestly, like, to hear about people's success is like cool and it is encouraging, but who wants to just sit down with someone and just hears about how great their life has been their whole life? Because then it's like, well, my life isn't that great, my God. And so I learned that if I can use all of my really hard parts of my life and resonate with people and relate with people to be like, I'm a human being too, and I've been in really low seasons too, it can in turn be the greatest gift for other people, because you're creating a seat of relatability and commonality with people to ultimately encourage them and empower them to one day use what they're going through now for the benefit of someone else later. And then it helps with life in general, because life is always going to be hard. It's a fallen world. Like, life is hard sometimes. And so to always have the mentality of like, I know that what I'm going through now will ultimately allow me to connect with somebody later. It helps you to be able to keep going, you know?
Yeah, that's so amazing. And I do think it's like we relate so much more to people's vulnerabilities than their strengths, and that's what connects us. It's like, even my acting coach always says that pain is the great equalizer. So like, pain is pain. Like the greatest pain that I've experienced in my life is the same like pain that you've felt, right? Like we can connect on that human emotion. And that's kind of one of the reasons why the name of this podcast is Imperfect, is because I feel like when we share our vulnerabilities, that's what connects us. And that is actually where the strength comes in, is when we're able to be vulnerable with each other, because then we can empower one another, like you said. And so I love that you are on that journey, that you have that mindset, and that you're now using it to empower so many people. And I like pulled one of your Instagram quotes because it's like feels creepy, but your Instagram graphics are like so amazing. Everyone, you have to follow her, because she just has like the most beautiful graphics with the most like profound and wise quotes. And so one of the things you said was, some of the greatest moments of influence is when others watch God walk you through the fire. I think that's so beautiful, because I think, like you were just saying, it's like when we're walking through those hard seasons, we're like, why is this happening? And it feels like you're going through this pain for no reason. And then there's two things. One, like at the other end of that, I've found I usually come alongside someone that is going through the same thing that I went through, and I can like be a testimony to them, like, hey, it gets better. Like this is like what God did for me in my life. And then I think also people watching you go through that hard season and having you come out the other side is also just such a testimony to the fact that things do get better, and that there's always purpose that can be found in the pain. So I just wanted to unpack that with you a little more, and like know if there's any advice you have to someone that might be walking through like a really difficult season like that.
Yeah. John Maxwell has a quote. He says, if you want to impress people, talk about your success. But if you want to inspire people, talk about your failures. And I read that when I was like 17 or something, and it changed my whole life, because I was like, that's so true. I think that it's very easy to like go on the cliche side of answers of like, if you're going through a hard time, like just hold on, and like it's gonna get better. You'll see the light at the end of the tunnel eventually. But one of the best pieces of advice I was ever given is that like when you are going through a hard time, it's very easy to like neglect your feelings in that hard time, because you just want to focus on the positive, you want to focus on what's ahead. But when we do that, whenever we do get out of it, at some point we'll realize that we never dealt with the emotions through it, and eventually it's going to catch back up to us. And so one of the best pieces of advice that I live by now is that whenever I am going through struggles and hard times, which is a lot more than I would prefer, than I would like to admit, to let myself feel every emotion while I'm going through it, and not to dwell on it, and not to play victim or like poor me, but to like sit in a moment and like let me feel like this pain, let me feel this rejection, let me feel this uncertainty, let me feel it all in the moment, and then set my mind on what is true, what is holy, what is pure, what is righteous, but to let myself deal with it in the moment, because then you're like already starting your healing process in that, and you're not waiting till like years down the road because you never dealt with your emotions when you were going through it. And that has changed it so much. And so like when you are going through hard times, feel all the emotions through it, but then remind yourself that it is going good, that there is light ahead. There's a scripture in Psalm 43, and I know not everyone might be a Christian, but you're going to resonate with this, so I don't really care. But it's David, and he was talking to himself, and he was so relatable, he was so human. And in verse 43, he says, soul, and your soul is your mind, your will, and your emotions. He says, soul, why are you cast down? hope in God, for you shall again praise him. And so in that, he was setting the example of like letting himself feel like what is going on, but then speaking truth and reminding him that there is good ahead, that there is going to be light ahead, that there is purpose ahead. And so sometimes I think we just need to like pep talk ourselves and like, hey, like you're going to make it, like it's going to be okay, like feel this, but remember what's ahead, because it's just a matter of time before you reach it.
Wow, that is so amazing. And yeah, I think it's like so important to be real with ourselves, and otherwise it will like, that trauma will just get pushed down and then later it will come out. It's like so cliche, but it's like putting a Band-Aid on a wound and not like letting it really fully heal. And I think that when you are real with yourself and you let yourself feel that way, and I think it's hard to do that sometimes in the social media world that we live in, where it's like put your best on social media and that's like your highlight reel, and not everybody is putting out like their days where they're feeling really terrible and going through a hard thing. So you sometimes think you're the only one going through that pain, but that's again getting back to sharing your vulnerabilities and sharing what you're going through with others. I think that allows people to feel like they have the permission to be real with themselves and to feel what they're feeling in those moments, that they can then heal and move through those difficult seasons. And I, like you said, I think sometimes there is that cliche messaging of like, just hold on. And it's like, okay, yeah, like I know I'm just holding on, but like, how do I actually get through this really terrible thing that I'm walking through? And with that, sometimes just as painful as like really intense trauma is like the seasons of waiting on something, like we were kind of saying before, of like having this big dream and being in the early stages and feeling like you're not where you are yet. What have you experienced in seasons of waiting? And like, what advice would you give to someone that is in a season of waiting?
I'm laughing because I feel like I'm like always in a pursuit of waiting. And I think that everyone is always in some kind of pursuit of waiting. Maybe that's just because we are selfish people and nothing is ever enough and we always want something next. But the biggest thing that I have learned in waiting is that like when you're waiting for something, you don't like sit and do nothing and just wait for something to fall in your lap. Like whether it be for a career or a relationship or an open door or something, waiting comes with like an accountability to ourselves that whatever we're waiting for is something that we need to take upon ourselves to start equipping ourselves for. So whenever it is presented to us, we're able to walk in it the best that we're able to, and we're able to receive it the way that we were intended to. And so waiting is really a pursuit of something that is worth waiting for. I know that sounds like really wordy, but like, let's say I'm waiting for a relationship. Lord knows I'm single, but like, let's say I'm waiting for a relationship. We don't just like sit here and like wait for this person to come in front of us and then expect that it's going to be amazing. No, like in this waiting season, I am developing and equipping myself. I'm working on patience. I'm working on boundaries. I'm working on self-image, so I am secure and confident when that does come. If I'm waiting for a career, I don't just wait for an interview, but I'm learning this necessary skills that I need to. If I'm waiting for a breakthrough like financially, I don't just sit on my butt and do nothing. I go and get a job and I do what I can, and then God does what he can that I can't do. And so waiting, I think waiting is like so misinterpreted, and it's like such a negative thing, when really waiting is such an opportunity for us to prepare for whatever it is that we are waiting for.
Wow. And I think, yeah, it's like there's a reason. I believe like if the thing that has been put on your heart hasn't happened yet, it's for a reason. And so what can I do to prepare so that when that opportunity comes, I can steward it really well and I can handle it? Because I think sometimes these dreams that we have are so big that if we get them prematurely, it will ruin us. I mean, the example I use is like, I've known I wanted to be an actress since I was 6 years old. And I was like, embarrassing confession, I would like stand in my room and like, you know, on Disney Channel, they're like, I'm so-and-so and you're watching the Disney Channel. Like I would pretend to do the wand thing in my room. I think this is the first time I've ever confessed that publicly, but I like wanted to be like, I was 13 and I was like, I'm going to be on the Disney Channel or all these things. And, I look back and I'm like, if I would have gotten the level of success that I was dreaming of at that age, it would have completely ruined me, because I am nowhere near like the person that I am, and like the maturity and just like the ability to get through like high pressure things. I'm also nowhere near the actress I was then. And so it's just like, sometimes if we get things prematurely, we'll lose it or we'll ruin that opportunity. So I love that mentality of using those seasons of waiting as preparation. And I also loved what you said about you feel like you're always in like this season of waiting, because I do think that is so relatable. And I was thinking about this the other day. I think sometimes we feel like, oh, I've overcome this thing, or I've overcome this season of waiting, and then you feel like you're like back here again, right? And you're like, have I regressed? Like, I'm back here, what's going on? I was talking to one of my mentors about this, and she was saying how in Western culture, we think of time as like a very linear thing. And in Eastern culture, a lot of times they think of it as cyclical. So like, I'm back here again. It might feel like you're back in that same season of waiting, but you actually continue to go deeper and deeper and deeper. So it might feel similar, but there's actually like new level of breakthrough that can come from that. There's new level of character development. There's new level of, we're both Christian, like you don't have to believe what we believe, but just like whatever that is for you, of like, for me, it's like growing closer to God and really having just like a heart for other people. There's always more to be uncovered in each season. So everything you said really related with me and kind of what I'm walking through right now. And I think part of that too, when you're in the waiting season, is you have a temptation to settle. How do you overcome that?
Oh my gosh. I have overcome that because I have settled too much in my life, and I have seen the repercussions that come from it. And oh boy, I am so passionate about that because I have done it. I literally have I have a note card in my car and in my bathroom that says, "You are not going to settle today," because I have settled so much in my life, and I've seen the negative impacts that it comes from that, not only for me, but for the things and the people that I want to reach. And I'll never forget, fun fact, I was engaged when I was 20 or 21, and the guy was great. Honestly, if you ever hear it, he's a great guy. I was not ready for a relationship, and it came prematurely, and I couldn't handle it. I had stuff that I had to deal with and heal from, and I was like not ready for it. But I was trying to make it work, and I knew that was going to be settling in that area of my life. But you know, I was like, I'm gonna get married, whatever. And I'll never forget, my friend sat down with me, and I was like sharing my heart on the situation and everything, and they looked me dead in my face and they said, "Your ministry deserves this breakup." And I was like, I said, "What do you mean?" And so I started to like think about that more, and I was like, the people who I'm going to meet one day, the ministry that I want to have, the career that I want to have, they deserve for me to have my best foot forward. And like, I have to care about the people that I'm going to meet. I have to care about the things I'm going to do enough to keep me accountable to not settle, like not only for me, but for the people I'm going to reach. And so if I'm settling in certain areas, that's ultimately hindering me from reaching people that I'm supposed to reach. And then I'm not just hindering me, but I'm hindering other people because of my own selfishness and stubbornness to settle in something that I was just too impatient to wait for. And so I have to have that mentality, or I will settle. Like, I can't just make it about me. I have to care about other people enough to keep myself in check and to keep myself in line, or I'll be like, whatever. But when you can care about people enough to keep your crap together, then it helps you a lot. I don't know if I can say that, but
no, that's totally fine.
Okay. Okay.
It's real, it is like, we do have crap that we have to work through, and it's like sometimes it's so easy for me to see the best in other people and to encourage them and to be like, I see the greatness that's on your life, like don't settle, keep going. But when it's me, sometimes I'm like, and it's like, if you can see yourself the way that you see others, and give yourself that same love that you so easily give to others, and also know that what you're doing will impact so many people. I was listening to a podcast recently where he was talking about finances. He's like a financial advisor, and he's single, but he wants to have a family one day. And he thinks of like, if he's irresponsible with purchases now, he thinks of that as like a no that he's going to have to say to his kids one day because he was selfish and impatient and couldn't wait for that. Yeah. And I think like whatever it is, whether it be your future family or your future self or future people, like imagining that conversation of having to say no to someone because you settled in that season that you're currently in, I feel like that's so brilliant and such a good tangible way to just like keep going and not give up on yourself. So in that same vein, like while you're waiting, while you're kind of overcoming this temptation to settle, I think it's easy to overlook the progress that we have made in that season, even if we're not completely out of it and the promise hasn't come yet. I think, at least for me, it's hard to see how far I've come. And so how have you, if at all, like developed this ability to celebrate yourself in those seasons and to recognize those checkpoints?
Yeah, I was just having a conversation about this yesterday with someone, because I feel like this has been something that has been pretty prevalent lately. But to like always live in, I have it written on my wall back there, it says a heart of patient expectation, but to live in a way where you are always in remembrance, but you always have a heart of a patient expectation, to be committed to patience, but to still be expectant for what's ahead, but to always be living in remembrance of where you come from. I know that's like a mouthful, but if you put it all together, it makes a lot of sense and it helps so much. And so for me, I'll be 24 this year, and when life gets really hard, like I just got out of a terrible season where I was like, I give up on everything. Bye, see you never. But like I had to like remember, and I was driving the other day, and I just felt like the Lord asked me, he was like, do you remember? And I was like, remember what? And I was like, what are you talking about? But when I was 14, or like when I was 16 and I was on this drug, or I was this broken, and just like looking at like how different my life is now compared to where it was then, it reminds me that like there's still so much more to come. And like if this drastic of a change can happen in just 7-8 years, it's like what more can happen then? And so I think when we don't look back and like don't like stare behind your shoulder 24/7, because then you're gonna live in the past, but like I think we should always like glance behind and like remember of where we used to be, or that one bad relationship we were in, or that one drug we were on, or that one job we hated. And it's like, remember, like you're not there anymore, and like you are here, and to like put the two together. And so live in remembrance, but then like readjust your focus and have an expectancy to where you're going. And it helps me so much.
That reminds me of my friend gave me this analogy the other day of like a rower, you know, those like rowing machines where you like, you like pull back and then you go forward, and you pull back and you go forward. And it's like that dynamic image of like taking from your past and like remembering that and letting it propel you forward into what's to come, because it is this like really sweet spot of like remembering the past but not living there, looking towards the future but not like being obsessed with it, and then like bringing those two things together, bringing what you've walked through, bringing the vision, and like melding that into the present. Because I know for me it's really hard sometimes to be present, because I'm like really focused on the dreams and the goals that I have. I'm also like a writer as well, so I really do like to sit and like think about the past and like journal through my emotions, which is great.
Right.
But taking those two things and letting them fill you up for the present, I think is so important, to not get like stuck in too much in the past or the future.
Yeah.
And I also think part of that as well, and like being present and celebrating those victories, is who you surround yourself with. How has that shaped in your life, and what advice do you have for people that maybe they're in a season and they're realizing they're surrounded by people that aren't celebrating their progress or not really edifying them? Like, how have you set boundaries and really been discerning in that area?
Yeah, man, friendships are so important. And I think I just want to say, like, it is okay to go through a season if you are just by yourself for a little bit because you had to cut out people. I think people, like, freak out and they're like, I can't isolate myself, or I can't be myself. I have to have people. But I would rather you be by yourself for a little bit than be with people who are going to drag you down or keep you stagnant. Because, honestly, you'll do better off by yourself than with people who are going to keep you negative. And someone told me a while back, they're like, never ever spend time with people who don't celebrate your progress and who don't like make you feel more alive after leaving a conversation. If you have friends and you feel dead after leaving a conversation, you just feel drained and negativity, or they're always gossiping, or just talking about stupid stuff of like who posted what movie this, like yada yada yada, like no, like whoever you hang out with, it's, everyone says it, like show me your friends, I'll show you your future, but it is so important. And like you have to surround yourself with people who make you dream, people who make you think, make you ponder on things, who are helping you grow. And if you don't have those people, you're not a bad person for cutting people out, and you're not a bad person for ending things. It's this thing called self-care, and it's this thing called self-loving that I think more people need to do. And it's like, you're not a bad person, you're not an evil person because you don't want to spend time with someone anymore. There's a point where, like, yes, care about people and love people, but you have to love yourself and care about yourself enough first. And I have this one saying, it's like, welcome everybody with a smile, but not everybody with a seat. And so be kind to everybody, but don't welcome everybody a seat at your table other than people who are growing and adding value to your life.
Wow, that's so incredible. And I think I was talking about this with a friend recently as well, about boundaries, because I think it is hard. Like, I think most people generally want to be nice to other people. And so I think a lot of women especially struggle with this, of like just wanting to be nice and be there for everyone and not wanting to cut people out because it feels mean. But what's really helped me is the more that I allow those people in my life that are draining me and toxic in any way, it's actually draining me from the people that I want to give my love to and that I want to encourage and inspire. And the more that I kind of getting back to the like not settling and envisioning the people that you'd be letting down, I think the same is true with boundaries. If you don't have the proper boundaries in place right now, it's actually doing a disservice to the other people that are currently in your life, and also the other people that could be coming into your life that you just don't have the space for them at this time. Even getting back to like an analogy that with acting, I always use that as like my frame of reference. But I think like with an agent one time, I had like a really toxic agent who was like not edifying me, didn't really believe in me, wasn't calling out like the best in myself. And my acting coach was like, well, why don't you fire them? And I was like, because I don't have another agent yet. Like, I want to wait until I have another agent. And he was like, well, would you not break up with like a toxic boyfriend just because you don't have another boyfriend lined up? And I think sometimes that is something that like is hard too. But it's actually so much easier to have a new boyfriend or a new agent come in when you actually have that space. And I think it's like scary, and it takes faith to just like cut things off and set boundaries, even if, like you were saying, that means being alone for a season, whether that's in friendships or relationships. But I think that there's always like a reward at the other end of that, not settling.
Right.
And kind of, it's a bit of a pivot here, but it's something that I wanted to talk to you about because I know that you do a lot in women's ministry. And I've read, I think, in one of your blogs about how you thought that you would never work with women. You were like really hurt by women in the past. And that's something that is so relatable for me as well. I think also sometimes the area that you're most called to and the area that you'll have the most influence in, like you have so much influence now over women's lives, that's the thing that we're most attacked in. So we feel like we don't even want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. So how have you overcome that?
Oh my goodness. I get really emotional about it just because I did. If I'm like known for anything in my life, it has been saying I would never do women's ministry. And I said that I'm not called. I would rather do kids ministry over than women's ministry. And that says a lot for me because I like kids, but they're hard for me to deal with. Yeah. But for me, goodness, like I grew up and like my parents, they were still married. My parents recently got divorced last year. But my mom, she was present like physically in my life, but emotionally was not there. Like never came to a dance recital, a field trip, like didn't do anything. Like it was just like always had to like put on my best for her, and it was like nothing was like ever enough. And like majority of like my issues and my hurt that I had in my life came from like my mommy issues. People talk about daddy issues, but it's like I had deep mommy issues that I went to counseling for that I'm getting out of now. but that made me really insecure, and like I didn't have anyone to teach me how to be a woman. And then the people who did teach me how to be a woman was society and school and magazines. And so I thought it was like beauty and makeup and skinny and like mean, because girls were just mean. So I was like, I guess I'll be mean too. And then like as it progressed, two of my most like serious relationships with people who I really cared about, their families, I can openly talk about it now because like I'm healed from it, but like even their families, if they had sisters or their moms, it's like they were so mean to me. And I was like, am I just like not worthy to have like a mom be nice to me, or to have like a woman be nice to me? And I was having a pity party for myself, like we love to do sometimes, and I was just crying. And I was like, this is ridiculous. And I'm just like, God knows what I was saying. And I felt the Lord ask me, he was like, instead of complaining about it, he was like, did you ever think that maybe you're supposed to do something about it? And I said, but I don't want to. I said, what do you mean? So I did a lot of like evaluation and everything. And I was like, you know what? I was like, here I am talking my whole life about using your pain to be your greatest gift. But the area where I've been the most hurt in, it's like the one area I don't want to stay true to in. Yeah. And I was like, man, I was like, I need to do something with it. And so I did. I created a mentorship, and it started out like that. And I'm in the process of revamping it to something else that will be announced in the upcoming months, just to make it more effective, to reach more women. But it's like, I've learned, it's like, instead of being upset that I didn't have all these things or just whining about all the women who hurt me, it's like, let me, one, inspire and equip myself, and then so I can inspire and equip other people to become the examples that we wish we had, instead of whining and complaining about it. And so to care about our future daughters and our future girls that are going to look up to us and be like, let's set the example to be better than what we've seen, instead of just complaining about it and repeating patterns.
Wow. Yeah. It's so cliche. I feel like I'm going to sound so cliche right now, but it's like, be the change you want to see. I think it's so easy for us to be like, ugh, girls are so mean, or this, I hate that this is happening, and why is it always like this? But it's like, if you're feeling that way, so many other people probably are feeling that way as well. And again, it comes back to being vulnerable and being willing to say, like, I've walked through this pain. And then the more that you do that, more and more people are like, oh, me too, and they feel seen. And I want to speak to, like, if anyone's listening and they are going through a season of like dealing with really mean girls, because I have dealt with that. Like, I was bullied as a kid, and just like, I think it's really hard when you're walking through that like your identity is attacked, that it's like somehow you think that you're not worthy. And I know for me, I was like, am I just like not a good friend? Am I not worthy of like having good friends? And so what advice would you give to someone that is like really struggling with that right now?
The first time that my like identity was really challenged, because like even when I was crazy back in the day, like I never struggled with my identity. I was always confident in who I was. I was like, this is who I am. And the first time that was ever challenged really was about a year ago, when I had this one girl. She just tried to attack my life in every area, would like publicly post about me, would try to like take all my friends. And like for the first time in my life, it's like I had an identity crisis, because I was like, there's just something different when like another female comes at you, because it's like we're supposed to be on the same team. It's like I know that this girl hurts the same way that I do. I know that she has the same insecurities that I do. And so it's like when that comes attacking you instead of like partnering with you, it throws you for a loop. It's like, I don't know what to do. And so my advice would be to, and this is going to sound cliche, but it is what it is. You need to figure out who you are and like who the Lord says that you are, because when you try to build your identity, or like if your identity is shaken up when someone else does this to you, then it goes to show that you really don't know who you are that much. Because when you do know who you are, it's not that it doesn't hurt you, because you're human and it will hurt you, but it's like you can brush it off because you know that you're approved by the one who did make you. And I always give a different perspective, because it's like, no one is just mean because they were born mean, okay? Everyone has their own problems. And so, like, if you can humble yourself enough that when someone is attacking you, to, like, take a step back, take your emotions out of it for a second, and be like, why is this person acting the way that they are? Why are they saying the things that they're saying? Because it's not because they're just inherently mean. they had something wrong with them. They had something done to them. They have their own security. And so they are acting out of a place where they were hurt too. And so if we can look at people through the eyes of grace and mercy, we cannot take it so personal, because we know it's not an attack against us. It's just an attack on themselves, because they're hurting too. And so if we can respond in love and respond in grace, we don't have to entertain this bullying and the attack, but we can just trust in the Lord and like know who we are in ourselves and hope to be the change by the example in our response.
Yeah, I that's so true. I do feel like a lot of times when people mistreat you, it's usually a reflection of them and something that they're going through. And I know it's really hard because, like you said, it does hurt. But if you can take a step back and be like, what is this person going through that they are in so much pain that they want to inflict that on someone else, you know? And I think that's really, really important. And kind of like on the same vein, getting back to hope, like what would you tell yourself, the younger you? I know you've been through this like really amazing journey and have come so far. If you could tell your younger self anything, what would it be?
Oh, that's always a loaded question, because honestly, I don't even know if my younger self would have listened to anybody, but if she would have listened to someone, I would tell her to figure out like what she is passionate about and to let that be the why that drives everything. Because usually when people are like wandering all over the place or they're getting into things that they shouldn't be, or they're like stagnant, it's just because there's a lack of understanding of what they're passionate about. And so I would tell her, like, what are you passionate about? Figure out what you value, what's important to you, and then stand on that. Because when you know what's important to you and you know what you value and you know what you're passionate about, then you know what kind of decisions to make. And it's never, what do I do? It's because you know what you value, you know what you understand. And so therefore you always know what kind of decision to make, because it's in alignment with what you value. And so for anyone, I would say, what are you passionate about? What's important to you? What do you value? And to build your life on that and make your decisions surrounded by that.
Wow, that's incredible. I'm like, I need to write that down for myself. It's something that I feel like we could all, like, at every stage learn from. And okay, as you mentioned, you have like a lot of exciting things coming up. You said you're making an announcement at the end of this month, which I'm so excited to hear what that is. But I also know that you recently launched Becoming Better. I know that you also authored, not so recently, but The Second Table. So I'd love to, if you could just tell people a little bit more about both of those things.
Yeah. So I published The Second Table in November of 2019, which doesn't seem like it was that long ago, but it's crazy. And I just wrote it in a way where it would be able to relate to anybody. I think that there's a lot of books out there where it's like, I hurt in this season, but then this is how I got out of it. But I wrote it in a way where it's like definitely pushing the line of what's socially acceptable, because it's very honest, it's very real. I'm very open with all of the things that I went through in my life, but it's written in a way where anyone can read it and they can say, wow, like me too. And then I hit on church culture a lot and the idea of how through my experience in growing up and where I've been the past few years, that when it comes to church, people don't really have an issue with Jesus. They're not turned off by Jesus, but they have an issue with church people and how they represent him. And so I touch on church culture and how to represent Jesus the right way, where no one's turned off against it because of our own actions. And so that was just my first book. I wanted to share where I've been, how I view things, and what I've learned. And then Becoming Better, oh my gosh, I love it. It is my women's thing, and what I'm announcing next month is how I'm revamping it. But I launched my print shop, and so all the graphics that you were talking about, I've made them into prints. And so I have an online store with that, where I do a monthly subscription to where you pay $9 a month, and I send them to your house. You get 2 prints a month, just of words of encouragement that you can put in your office, your living space, whatever you might be. And so those are my 2 things, my little babies.
That's so exciting. I like I said before, your Instagram is not only like so visually aesthetically pleasing, but it's also like just so like saturated with such amazing wisdom. And so I feel like that's a rare combo to find. And I'm like so excited for you, because I'm like, yeah, this does need to live beyond just Instagram. So I know I will be checking that out. And where can listeners connect with you and stay in touch?
Yeah, I'm really only on Instagram. I told the Lord that he's going to have to use other people to be on TikTok and stuff because it's like not my thing. So really just Instagram, and then my website, hopemoquin.com, has all of my different resources and stuff.
Well, yeah, I'll link all that in the episode notes too, so that people, like I said, I sound like a broken record, but you have so much wisdom and encouragement to share. And so I've just been so blessed to have connected with you and have this conversation. And I know that so many other people will too. So thank you so much for being with us today, Hope.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Love you guys all.
Yeah, and thank you guys for listening. I'll see you next week.